asked to do it within certain boundaries. How do you suppose certain knowledge in past times was suddenly there? Luck? Chance? Coincidence? Questions. What is this divine law you talk about? Why do you manipulate this world? Why do you manipulate this world? How do you know who is allowing you? Is your job given to you or taken by you? Are you a human being? You again. The divine law has a purpose for you, and it is not on this planet. Prove you are worthy again to be released. Me again. I know it, and I can feel it. There is a purpose for my life, but I do not even know who I am, let alone know what my purpose is. How is this knowledge gained? By hard work, or does it simply happen to one? Do you know the purpose of your life? If so, how did you learn about it, regarding the planet we live on? On which planet do we live? What is the planet Earth anyway? What can you tell us about Muhammad? The divine law is the manifestation of the will of the superior one, which not only creates everything that exists within this universe, but also maintains, nourishes, balances, energizes, and renews it. It also reigns in other realms, including the realm you originally belonged to. 1 and 2, I have answered this many times. It is our duty. Rituals have a purpose. If you are doing something which was not allowed, or doing a task which was not given to you, you will suffer during these rituals. In your daily life, you will notice it too. Emanations have many forms, and one who knows about these matters will have no trouble recognizing with whom he is dealing with and what the message is. I am like you, present in this human shape. This has been answered by me in a previous post. In short, you have the duty to gain it. Temperance will lead you to the rightful place from where it all starts. Before this, you must know yourself and what this place is, where most people go wrong. Otherwise, your thoughts will be filled with error, which will lead to erroneous ways. 7. Yes, these matters are not passed on to you in detail by someone. That actually will lead to the opposite of what needs to be achieved. Hence my way of answering. Understand this. You can be guided up to a certain point, and then it is up to you. Looking at the way you summon his name, I assume you are a Muslim. It is a sin to worship, /idolize, /praise humans who are part of this planet in any way, shape, or form, including when talking or writing about them. You, by adding those letters in brackets, have done just that, elevating his name up to that of higher beings. A human is corrupt while on this planet, each and every single one of them. A death does not change the personality one had and leave behind here. Do not feed it. Praise and prayers may only be offered to perfect beings. Muhammad was like Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Buddha, a human who was led to believe he was a knower, or like mentioned earlier, master of the game. It is very easy to make humans believe they are enlightened and know the truth, and then thinking it is their task to wake up others. He was used, and his legacy is still being used to divide people, just like the other religions and ideologies. 2 of his closest assistants were servants of the bloodlines. 1 of his wives was too. Bloodline servants were also assistants of Jesus, Buddha, Moses, name them all. After his death, it was made sure by these 3 that his followers would be divided, which was the main thing Muhammad was told to be against. So Muslims who believe in separate streams of Islam are actually rebelling against their own prophet, and that would be pretty much all Muslims. The Quran has a core of truth, but it is floating in a sea of perversions, together with the other holy books. It was written by 4 individuals from 3 countries, 1 being Western, 2 Middle Eastern. Insider 13. Are you Antichrist? Jesus of Nazareth is not the Christ, nor is anything I have said Antichrist. The ones who claim the opposite are. So is a family where the children are naturally born with this ability, visualization, part of the bloodline? No. In fact, someone who has no connections to these families whatsoever can have this ability too. This ability is there for everyone to receive. You have to dial in. It is being provided by the divine law to everything that searches for it. I tried to make this clear earlier. The blood, genes, etc. are not as important as they seem. The physical realm is weak, and it cannot affect the divine. Someone with no connections to the families can be affected by divinity in such a way that he could surpass anything the bloodlines could ever achieve combined. Certain individuals get born into the bloodlines to be able to reign over the people under certain circumstances. That is what the bloodlines mainly is about. To me, elite means those who place money before people, or any real values at all, and those who hold office either because they can buy it or inherit it, regardless of whether they are not qualified. You just skillfully described your kind, not mine. Are you a Rothschild? Here is my question. Although petty in the light of the many questions posed to you on this thread, why aren't any of the Rothschilds listed in Forbes' top 500 richest people? If you read closely, you would not have asked this question. The ones who are known in public are not in control. The Rothschilds are at the same level as your Knights Templar ancestors were. You should not be proud that you are from that lineage, by the way. Those known families, clans, societies are merely dancers to the tune. But to answer your questions, no, I am not a Rothschild. Which family am I from? Most here talk about the bloodlines who rule, yet they do not know who they are. They wrongly assume they are the Bushes, Clintons, Rothschilds, etc., because some theorists researched it and some insiders told them by providing evidence. I am from a ruling family whose name rarely has been mentioned in history. No one will even know who we are. Second, you accepting Forbes as a reliable source for these kinds of lists shows you are easily manipulated and do not grasp what is happening. Worthy, an interesting word. Are you expecting those of us who know about the world of polarity and try our best not to play the polarity game to believe that we need to be worthy? In whose eyes it can only be our own. Whatever happened to the idea that the universe is within us? Gaia and all other dimensional realities are illusions. No. So the prison is an illusion, right? Do you know who manufactured this new age nonsense you just promoted? If this prison is a true illusion, get out then, right now. I dare you. It is not like in the movies. You play the victim part. You do not even accept you have free will. Therefore, you will always be ruled over, never prevail, and deserve everything you get according to universal laws. I may be back tomorrow. Before I start, I have to say I cannot see all posts. Some are blank, so I may miss questions. If so, ask again. Refrain from asking the same questions over and over again. First, check the thread. Check my answers. I do tell about areas which were not asked about, but may have been on your mind. Read carefully. And if these beings are Lucifers, answer in 5 words or less, please. You used 12 words and 1 number. Without realizing it, you started a part of a ritual. Are you a being of Lucifer? Different beings have different characteristics, which makes it easy to identify them during rituals. If it was a malicious being guiding me, I would not be talking in the way I do. Someone who is led by malicious forces cannot utter or write certain words, phrases, without it affecting him. The ones who are led by them also cannot accept hearing/reading certain things without getting overly mad or aggressive. See the thread for examples. This is when malicious beings are present. Every time you cuss, talk negative, plot a scheme, get violent, utter lies, support murder, get sexually aroused, get afraid, get jealous, even laugh out loud, being overly joyful, they appear near you, 1, 2, 3, or more of them. Malicious beings are from this realm. This is their home. You cannot hate them, for they are doing their task, their rightful duty, and it is connected to your behavior. Understand, you are the perpetrator. They react. They never instigate. You do. If you do hate them, you are missing an important part of the reality. Respect them up to a certain point. This will also show you are conscious about them, and that will be recognized. I type malicious because they are not malicious. They only appear to you in your manufactured perception to be so. People are perpetrators who play the victim part. How does real consciousness interface with this prison? What are the techniques to break the hold of the interface and free the consciousness? Depends what is meant by real consciousness and interface. From where I stand, they could be almost the opposite of what you may mean. Real consciousness is what is provided to you when you are in tune with the mind of the universe. which operates according to the divine law. They are not the same, like many are led to believe. The mind penetrates everything. It rules over everything. So if you will connect with it, you may experience it's an unlimited power. No prison can confine this power. Hence there will be an escape. You will be guided up to a certain point. Yet most work is to be done by you. But that is just the beginning. Much work lies ahead concerning yourself. I have explained a few times, as far as I am allowed, to how to connect, at least how to start with it. It truly is up to you. I would hesitantly add that studying ancient texts will help, although a lot is filled with perversions and wrong translations intentionally. But this, only after a certain level of awakening, you will recognize/remember the small parts which are true. If you are not on that level, you will take parts of the perversions/wrong translations as the truth, as a few show it here, especially one religious stream, and fail. Care to tell us which it is? You some sort of good guy who gives up tools, or do you rule over us? Did you change your mind or what? Neutral means in the terms I used, neither negative nor positive, merely providing the tools you can choose to use as you wish. You are the perpetrator. Or would you say I control every aspect of your life, every hour, every minute, every second, and force you what to think, say, and do? Do not be mad at the wrong individual. Is it necessary to know why we are here to escape, or just work out where we are? Are the answers to be found inside, or by joining societies, or by appealing top divine intervention, or all three, or none? You have answered no other of my questions. I hope I have not offended. It is necessary to have a view of the whole spectrum. When it is partial, it will be like looking through the window, while it is partially covered with a curtain. You do not know what is behind that covered part, therefore cannot act accordingly. What covers the whole spectrum? Understand this place, what and where it is. Know what you are, how you came here, why you came here, how to return. Prepare yourself for the answers. Cleanse yourself. Reach out for the mind. Speak, within, without, that you are ready. Live strictly according to the answers. Do not join secret societies. Never, whatever the circumstances are. Also, no religions, including the New Age. Do not accept human gurus, prophets, priests, rabbis, imams, popes, fortune tellers, mediums, Dalai Lamas, politicians, authors, scientists, celebrities, parents, etc., as legitimate authority on divine matters. On other matters, it is your choice to accept or decline. However, accept the consequence. You only need yourself and the divine. No intervention by others in bodies. Again, no intervention by any body. If your father asks you for a glass of water to show if you care for him and are disciplined, do you bring it directly to him? Or do you take the glass of water to your neighbor and ask him to tell you what it is that your father really asked? Well, the neighbor did not hear it and now is drinking the glass of water himself. Am I also a neighbor? I have not touched the glass of water. I opened the door and told you to go back to your father. No one has offended me. People offend themselves. I would be offended if what I say was against the one, and if it is, I shall pay. I answer the questions from where I left, and type as much as time allows me. Sometimes I skip a question because it has been answered. Other times the question is irrelevant, and now also because I cannot see all posts. So what are your comments on Nazara, Planet X, Pole Shift, First Contact, Second Coming? Who or what is behind these fairy tales, and why? Nasara, counterproductive to you personally in the long run. Planet X does not exist anymore, like so many planets, moons, stars, and galaxies. Their demise, however, always brings forth something, which means they never stop being part of the whole, playing their part. Pole shift. It happened 2 times to my knowledge, in the second and third era. If necessary, it will be done again. Second coming. You returning back to where you belong after you have succeeded, which means a second coming cannot take place on Earth, for you do not belong here. People who are waiting for a savior on Earth to do all the work for them are all failing. I have noticed some Christians have gotten angry and are attacking me on a personal level by damning me. It is their choice. I talked more about Christianity than any other religions, because the questions gave room for that. I would say and have said similar things about the other religions/ideologies when asked about them. What interests me is this. If someone takes the time and trouble to follow up the leads and clues left in numerous books and legends and sorts out the wheat from the chaff, what then? If that person puts into practice what they have learnt, do they come closer to the truth that the bloodlines evidently have access to? Yes. Again, the bloodline is only important for ruling over people. It is not about having a special power that makes one more aware. Although the knowledge is being passed on, so therefore it appears like that. But this knowledge is not hidden. The truth cannot be hidden if it wants to be known by you, inviting you every moment of your life. That is the reason why through the ruling powers is being provided to you, accompanied with perversions, corrupt additions, to confuse and make you accept the latter. There is not one written book which contains the truth, and nothing but the truth. Pick it out, and live accordingly to it. Incorporate it into every aspect of your life. That is the hardest part for people, for you have to float above this physical/material world, while being in the body that dictates the opposite. How close to the truth are the writings of Neil Donald Walsh in his Conversations with God series? Are you in any way related to the bird tribes mentioned in Ken Carey's Starseed Millennium books? Is there much truth in the writings of Sheldon Needle of www.powweb.com? The Native Americans have preserved knowledge successfully, but nowadays, in the last century or so, it is being presented in an erroneous fashion. Integration is working. About the authors you mentioned, like I posted before, it is not in your interest to accept human intervention, advisors or salesmen, between you and the divine. They may say certain things which are true, yet it will never be complete. No one on this earth has the power to free any of us. No one outside this earth sees a reason to free any of us. The divine source itself, if there is such a thing, is waiting for us to free our own selves, individually. There will be no mass ascension or mass enlightenment, and we the people have all been duped by we the people into prolonging our sentence here. We can stay here in this place for eternity if that is our choice, and we have created a belief system that allows us to do so. I would leave out the sentences, no one outside this earth sees a reason to free any of us, and if there is such a thing. About the first sentence, there was a time when there were beings who had the power to do it, but that was not their task. And the divine source is. There is no waiting, wanting, etc. You are on the way. The other post showed that too, but living it is an important part of the task, and by divine law, Christ was sent here to correct the situation. Yes, but Christ did not descend into the body of a human called Jesus of Nazareth 2014 years ago, on March 20th, almost 2 hours before sunrise, which is the secret time of birth of your Son of God. The Christ, which has a different real name, but I will use this name here, appeared once, just once, and this was in another era. Not even close to our era where Jesus of Nazareth also lived in. Do you know who keeps the knowledge about the real Christ alive? And do you know who keeps the knowledge about the fake Christ alive? The opposite of what you are thinking. Why do all elitists worship Lucifer, the liar and deceiver? Billions of people on this planet are serving their own corrupt material, physical, mental, and emotional desires. Are they all elitist? Is there currently a family feud between the higher beings? The higher beings are not in physical bodies. They have no feuds. They are not under the control of this realm, therefore cannot suffer from this. You are referring to human bloodlines, and I reckon it is pretty obvious from what I have been writing here, what the answer to your question is. There always have been some who do not do their duty. I am from a minority. Please do not see a difference between the factions. Do not pay attention to the world events. They are all orchestrated to make you pay attention to them. The struggle you should pay attention to is on a personal level. What you said could happen, but it would be done by the ones who control the lower areas. The ones higher up do it for the daily items you consume. I want to know what you know about this. I do not know you personally, but I already know I do not eat or drink 90% of what you do daily, to throw in a percentage. I do not even come close to touching them. It is pretty much everything sold, with a few exceptions here and there. I must add that there are grades in this, and it has a different effect on different people. To give examples of the two extremes of people who have been consuming them for a long time. Some, when eating these, almost get into a trance. On others, it has no effect whatsoever. Most people are somewhere in between. It affects them in such a way that they do not notice. They wear out faster, get tired faster, grow older, think slower, focus on emotional/physical needs, get health problems that were unheard of 200 years ago at that relatively young age, i.e., the quality of life declines. You are not what you eat, but what you eat controls how you feel about yourself, the way it makes your body respond. Through your own ignorance and laziness, you hurt yourself. When is the last time you investigated what exactly is in what you are eating, or how your soda got prepared? When looking into it and finding all these agents and knowing what they are known to cause, ask yourself, would I put this agent into the mouth of my child and make him or her swallow it? You are doing that every day to your child. Then there are electrical frequencies, as you mentioned. It is everywhere, and your house being the most active place. Have you ever cut the electricity off in your house to see what the difference in vibe is? You sleep more comfortable, for one. Who or what did the elites answer to? Everyone answers to the one eventually. Do you have any connection with the Anunnaki that the Sumerians wrote of? How close to the truth is the book, the Illuminatus Trilogy, The Eye in the Pyramid, The Golden Apple, Leviathan by Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson? Is Moroni, who is mentioned in the Book of Mormon, really an extraterrestrial, and are such beings still interacting with humanity at present? They are not here anymore. That was another era. Their knowledge was not theirs. Knowledge is always passed on, hence it being present now. I have not read it/them. If it is getting critical acclaim and being promoted heavily, you know what time it is. It may contain some truths, but it will be floating in a sea of perversions. No one is saying that authors are doing it knowingly, by the way. Some do, some don't, and the latter get noticed and promoted because it serves them. Nothing is easier than to write a bestseller book, hit album, movie script, if you know what the highest promoter's agenda is. Mormons are like the other religious people, controlled by the ones who controlled their prophets, Son of God, angels, saints, etc. In this realm, a soul which was in a physical body, once, cannot become an angel. The soul cannot transform into that. Again in this realm. I repeat that firmly. Yet, it is claimed that Moroni was resurrected as an angel in this realm. Mormonism has a core of truth, like the other religions, so reading the text will not harm you, as long as you are cautious. They include the sheikh in the desert whom Jesus encountered during his travels, and from whom he received a blessing. Would you happen to know anything about that? I know some people which Jesus of Nazareth happened to encounter were insiders. The 3 kings being the first right after his birth, which were actually 5, but 2 were present in the background. The number 3 in the story serves a symbolic purpose, like so many things. Read slowly. The gifts were the symbolistic artifacts, some ancient, which through rituals would initiate him into his chosen task, for he needed to travel to certain places. I have said a few times, and I will repeat for the last time, he was not the real Christ. He was made to appear like one, by being guided throughout his life up to his death, and after that, the documenting of the words, which started long before his death, although rewritten again at a later time to release. The 5 kings were present too, during his crucifixion, and Jesus of Nazareth knew he would have responded differently if they were not there. He was always aware that he was being guided by them. In fact, he sometimes actively searched for them, and other insiders. He gave up on 2 occasions, but was guided back. The elite are making it look like oil is being constantly restored, but are actually storing it. I'd appreciate your thoughts on this. Candace Freeze's writings. The earth is storing it until they get used. The ones in power just tap into it. Although there are some factions above the puppets, and they are responsible for the misconception most have, which you describe together with the statement that the resources are disappearing. It is the way I described in the former post. The writing has some errors. The Anunnaki are rulers from a different era. They are gone and replaced by others, 10 to 15,000 years from now. Yes, the earth will still be alive. People will find texts about the rulers of this era, thinking it still applies to theirs. Those texts have been rewritten for the major part already. If what was written in this text was true, it would mean that at the moment, the earth, star friends, and angels would now be rebelling against the divine law of the One, which is an abomination. Fall into the trap too. Desires. Intervene. Do it. To test if we have the will to continue, or is there in fact a force that tries to keep people in a sleepwalking state? A force that does not want people to be all they can be. If so, what is the best way to deal with it in your experience? It is connected to the operations of your physical body, which rebels every time you reach higher to that realm. Physical body has the task to let you experience this reality, and whenever you search for the other, it resists. It is its duty, so respecting it and gently taming it is the best approach. Also, beings will accompany your thoughts and try to divert them. Again, it is their duty. Show respect, and that will be recognized by them. Never see them as malicious or evil. They only react to your actions. There is not a force which does not want you to be what you really are. The opposite is true, but the different type may be born into, and is in a thing because it is the first time it came to this physical realm. Has lost its power, even where they are. Some forget after the first few months. One can even hear it. Comfort them during this crucial period of consciousness, and make it known that the One has gifted them with a chance to return back to where they belong. This will have an impact, which will influence them for the rest of their lives, subconsciously. The time of birth was determined, as in the time of passing on, together with the environment, parents, circumstances of birth, health, etc. Nothing is a coincidence. But during puberty, they get cut loose from certain strings, and they will be fully responsible for their actions. Having the free will to lead the life they want, they determine the quality of it. They can even determine the way they pass on, death, by the choices they make, but cannot change the time of passing on. Just a few areas of their lives will be influenced by the tools that the parents have given them. Most of the child's life will be based on free will, which will have very little to nothing to do with parents. You are only important in the first 5 to 6 years of the child's life, so that is where you can do the most good. Use your intuition, not instinct, 2 different matters. When becoming a parent, you are rewarded with qualities, which concern raising children, which were not available before. Listen to them. Every child is different, respond differently, but make them aware there is more than they experience, that there is a good source, where everything/everybody flows out of for a reason, and one day they will return after realizing their task here on earth. Do not tell this all at once, but over years, and do not tell more than this. If done the right way, they will start looking for it on their own for the rest of their life, which is their duty. If you present it to them in an obvious way, you will achieve the opposite. Musical instruments were passed on in a different era for a reason, and it was not just to listen to other people playing them. Education, one method of manipulation. They will be manipulated, but after puberty, they have an important opportunity to undo it. They will also get opportunities during the rest of their lives. You cannot stop the manipulation, neither instigate an awakening. That is up to the child and how it responds to the tools provided to it. The mind of the universe, following divine law, is always penetrating your child, so it is being provided with a chance to awake every moment. It is up to him/her. What do you eat? Where does it come from? What nature provides directly. I have a greenhouse which provides me with certain vegetables/fruit which sprang from uncontaminated seeds. I have some healthy animals which provide me with meat, eggs, milk. I get my water from an underground spring. For you to know, bread can be bought at small independent bakeries, especially the foreign ones, who do not use the same ingredients as the natives. They are not free from them, but better still. Some of the food/drinks sold in these foreign-run shops will be better for you than the ones sold in supermarkets. This is not how the rest of my family lives. They have servants, which provide them with their needs, with the products from their own properties, factories, farms, etc. Insider, what can you tell me about Nikola Tesla? Do you think he completed/failed his mission here on Earth? All knowledge is passed on. Tesla's was too to him. They are not his original ideas. 2 insiders passed on to him the knowledge, knowing Tesla would use it to advance the plan, which was alive then, to gain control over the energy resources from certain bloodlines by diminishing their value with new technology. Tesla made it public to the wrong people and ended the whole thing. Clever individual, not so clever human. Insiders from the minority must be vigilant because of these kinds of events. Insider, are you saying here that the old ways were based on truth and were correct? should we seek the old ways and follow them? The first appearances of knowledge are closer to the truth than the latter ones. Think of the ripple created in a pond when throwing something in it. The further the waves get from the core, the weaker they are, finally stopping. 4,000 years ago is relatively young in this era. Wrong translations, wrong interpretations, /additions, and deletions will mislead you. Therefore, search for the mind of the universe, which will enable you to pick out the truths, and later on, directly pass it through. Being in harmony with everything, the divine law is providing us with, which were designed to realize a return, without interpreting it in human terms. The divine one is. There is no interested, wanting, etc., although its emanations, manifestations, and characteristics may act according to the one. We do not have a mind. We may interact with the mind, which may allow us to become one with it. To have something is owning it. Owning means mastering it, or having under your control, at the least. We do not master the mind, neither do we control it. Most confuse using intelligence with having a mind, while using the intelligence is merely an operation granted to us by the mind. A soul does have different essences. It consists out of certain part covers, although it is one being. One of them could be called the heart, that which connects to the spring of life, which keeps us alive, provided by the one through its emanations. All essences are as important. One of them could be called the heart, that which connects to the spring of life, which keeps us alive, provided by the one through its emanation. Lead to magic. Random I believe I was telepathically contacted by aliens. Who am I? A deeply flawed, imperfect person and young man. What did I experience? What felt like telepathic contact with aliens. Prophetic visions and fantasies, later verified shortly after in life. From small random details, to seeing a car flip over on the road in a daydream reverie, and going out to help the drivers. The night after this, my dad told me he was driving somewhere at night, saw a car veer off to the side, and flip over by the road in front of him, and pulled over to help them. Luckily, they were unharmed. To a vision of the pandemic, a totalitarian plot to enslave and depopulate the world, and dissenters being harshly mocked and excluded from society as insane or bigoted, hateful conspiracy theorists, shortly before the pandemic. Why do I think this happened? I cannot say for sure, but think it's possible that I've been subconsciously influenced and primed by ETs for experiences like this since childhood. As a teenager, I had a spiritual awakening, which led to me heavily diving into esotericism, occultism, mysticism, the study of world religions and philosophy for years, along with other massive synchronicities associated with my own studies into these. Do you think you're a special person, starseed, have special abilities, are some type of uniquely bestowed teacher, leader, messiah, guru, prophet, or gift to humanity? Absolutely not. I'm just another person. I'm far from a hero, and did not react to these events bravely. They gave me a nervous breakdown and made me depressed for years. But I mainly, and fortunately, recovered in about the past year, which was also seen in my vision, that I would struggle with mental illness for years, and then recover and even flourish. AMA if you will. Sorry for the lengthy essay/blog post. Again, I cannot claim to be omniscient and may not even be a good oracle or source of info on everything. Just what I know, or failing that, think I know. Some stuff that might get the thread going. I believe there are such things as books of power, to rework some terms from the shamanic tradition, described by Carlos Castaneda in his works. Basically, books endowed by the author's experiences, wisdom, and supernatural experiences, with a type of power which can awaken dormant energies and tendencies towards having these same or similar experiences in receptive readers. Books that can act like a blessing or a curse. So what does this mean? In fact, it's a similar worldview to both occultists on the one hand, and traditional religious followers on the other, except with different values attached to it, like reading books on magic, the occult, esotericism, UFOs, etc., can open you to demonic possession. But reading the Holy Scriptures is good and puts you under God's influence. Like some fundamentalist Christians say, or conversely, deeply studying and practicing what's in these books can actually lead to magic. So what are some books of power, whether malevolent or benevolent? Works like Philip K. Dick's Valis, Robert and Tom Wilson's Cosmic Trigger, and other works of his. I, in fact, was reading Cosmic Trigger when the events started overtly happening, which scared the shit out of me, because it's exactly what Raw was talking about in that book. His paranormal experiences, synchronicities, and sense of communicating with hyper-intelligent, extraterrestrial beings. The Carlos Castaneda books, as just mentioned, Whitley Strieber's Communion and his other works, and works in general of or about alien contactees and or abductees, Dr. John Mack's Abduction and other works, Bud Hopkins' collected works on alien abduction, and interviews of those claiming to have undergone it. Carl Wendell C. Stevens' massive collection of works on the same, other works of/about alien contactees, like Betty Andreasson, the Andreasson Affair, etc. Religious texts and scriptures in general, Gitas, the Torah, the Old and New Testaments, the Quran, Buddhist sutras. Some of esotericism, mysticism, and the occult. Kenneth Grant's Typhonian tradition. The Gurdjieff four-way teachings, theosophy, anthroposophy, and so forth. Some other conspiracy/alien literature, like the Montauk books by Preston Nichols, Peter Moon, and some other figures at times. David Icke's books. It could go on for quite a while. Mentioning of a book is not endorsement of that book or everything in that book. There could easily be, and undoubtedly is, lots of hogwash or horseshit scattered in some of these books, while they still have overall merit and value. Natal chart. I'm not into the actual modern study of astrology / the zodiac signs, even while knowing and accepting some teachings about astrology. The man is the receiver of, and intimately bound to, and influenced by astrological influences, planets and stars, as analogically angels / archangels, etc. There's also some Hindu teachings tying astrology / astronomy to their yuga cycles, chronology, and their esoteric teaching that the sun of our solar system revolves around a distant black hole at the center of our galaxy, allegorically named Kali Ma, and that one full revolution of our sun around this black hole takes about 26,000 years, a time period corresponding to the precession of the equinoxes of Earth, discovered by modern-day astronomers. We're currently at about the 13,000-year midpoint descending cycle of this revolution, having reached the lowest phase in human history, the Kali Yuga. Around now, the Kali Yuga culminates in an apocalypse, clearing the way for the ascending Dwapara Yuga, corresponding to the sun rounding that curve and completing the latter half of its galactic year cycle around the black hole. This Yuga cycle theory is laid out by the Hindu guru Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, who was the teacher of Paramahansa Yogananda, who was instrumental in bringing Hinduism to the United States in the early 20th century. The guru of Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri was himself Sri Lahiri Mahasaya, who was initiated into Kriya Yoga, a practice of mentally chanting mantras and revolving them up and down your spine in rhythm with your being, held to lead to a rise in Kundalini Shakti in the human body, nervous system, etheric, astral, and causal bodies, leading to an awakening of the God Self, or in the fourth state of Turiya Samadhi, stilling and inducing the mind towards Samadhi, or cessation of ordinary mental processes, and subsequent enlightenment by the immortal Hindu guru Mahavatar Babaji, who has been reputedly alive for a couple thousand years, and sometimes finds receptive Hindu yogis and students to teach, according to legend. I mention this seeming digression because religion plays a big role in this. The most advanced sages, saints, teachers, mystics, gurus, yogis, shamans, and the like of various world religious traditions often have been the recipient of higher benevolent extraterrestrial contact. This is how Sumerian-style mythology and architecture that figures like Graham Hancock love and make so much of comes into play. This is analogous to what Jews, Christians, and Muslims might call angelic inspiration or talking with angels. However, conversely, and scarily enough, the obvious counterpart is also true, that likewise, some must have and may continue to contact or be psychically influenced by so-called demons or malevolent, anti-God, anti-good, dark extraterrestrial forces, as well as immaterial, etheric entities called asuras in the Hindu tradition. Most intelligent extraterrestrial races are far more long-lived than us and more technologically advanced than us. Some are even far more spiritually advanced than us, casually having and using abilities like telepathy, the manipulation of matter with the mind, psychokinesis, teleportation, clairvoyance, prophesizing, foresight, remote viewing, the spanning of space and time in general. However, not all technologically more advanced races are more spiritually advanced, and vice versa. You can see this in the West today. The soulless, perverse NWO leaders hoard Black Ops technology and current edge scientific research, but are actually malevolent and degenerate. Anyway, some of these aliens in fact created us. We are modeled after them, similar to the story of Adam and Eve being made in our image, or the Elohim's image, in the book of Genesis. We were probably genetically engineered as a race renewal project of some aliens, using their genetics with the simians, ape or primate stock, of the earth to form humanity, including primitive root races like the Neanderthals, who were themselves upgraded into us. This explains the seeming unlikeliness of extraterrestrials frequently being displayed as a humanoid, with a head on some shoulders, a face with eyes, and a mouth like ours, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 feet and hands, etc. The reason for this is that we are, again, related to them. The more benevolent ones like to reach, contact, and educate receptive human beings on the earth, including about divine and cosmic reality, i.e., there is often a heavily spiritual message that contactees receive. Old religions and mythologies are something like a cargo cult. Do you know what a cargo cult is? When more technologically and culturally advanced Western colonists and settlers met indigenous people of the Americas, Africa, the Caribbean islands, Australia, and so forth, some of the natives, overawed by the Westerners' superior technology, food, access to medicine, etc., formed primitive cults worshipping their benefactors, and crudely continued to use the rites of their shamanic indigenous traditions, rain dances, sympathetic magic, totems, talismans, as well as carving items that looked like treasured ones of the West, radio-like wood carvings, or of planes, etc., in an attempt to imitate Western technology, or even try to magically compel their good favor and graces, to make them give more stuff to the natives. This cargo cult includes heavy social control elements from more malicious, crappy, and authoritarian extraterrestrial races. However, again, the situation is not so bleak as it first sounds, as some truly wise people of these traditions have indeed been, and some possibly continue to be, contacted and educated by benevolent, wiser, and more evolved ETs. This includes stuff like knowledge dispersed through Hindu schools, and teachings like Vedanta, Samkhya, Shaktism, and so forth, as well as even the mythological founders of these traditions, such as the being named Shiva, who lived on the earth about 50,000 years ago. Another alien contactee associated with the founding of a new religious school or teaching was the Buddhist Nagarjuna. His name translates, in fact, to friend of the Nagas, or reptilian beings in Buddhist and Hindu mythology, sometimes benevolent and sometimes malevolent. He essentially created Mahayana Buddhism as we know it today. According to legend, he received the teaching of the sutras from the land of Nagas. His works and teachings, from starting Mahayana philosophy, were massively influential in and continue to inspire Buddhist teachings like Chan and Zen Buddhism, as well as Tibetan Buddhism. Hence, in a surreal way, which actually makes a strange sense if you open your intuition to it and consider how alien and exotic and foreign a teaching like Zen is. A teaching like Zen actually partially has its roots of origin from off-world sources, and yet, in another sense, Zen has no historical origin at all, no one unique founder or lineal derivation, as it comes from all and nowhere, referring to certain high-level abstract truths about what they call the Buddha nature, on the nature of the self, or impermanence, or awareness, or attention to being aware, on non-dual subject-object equivalence, and so forth. Basically, stuff like these are projects they seed into world cultures as an attempted uplifting and benevolent influence on us for our own good. I'm going to take a break from the spread, as I sense I've given readers too much too quickly, possibly easily overwhelming you. Also, I'm unsure if there's even much interest or receptive listeners, and that many simply automatically discount this as the writings of a high-functioning / unusually verbose schizophrenic, and would not want to waste my time and effort if there was no good fruit of it. Great peace be with you. Other historical alien contactees include Parmenides of Elea, the ancient Greek pre-Socratic philosopher who lived around the 6th to the 5th century BC. The legend he himself handed down in his philosophical poem, the major remaining source we have of his teachings, has him receiving a revelation from an unnamed, golden-haired goddess who whisks him into the heavens in a luminous chariot. She then explains to him how the mortals of Earth live in distorted pseudo-realities, with warring, fragmentary, conflicted cultures which obscure the truth, hence only having access to their own spurious opinion. The way of truth, the goddess reveals to him, is based off a seemingly simple, yet most profound axiom. Being is. Only being exists, and non-being does not exist. This, Parmenides uses as a launching point for a monist philosophy expounding on the oneness of being, similar to the philosophy and theology of the Vedas. In New Age parlance, Parmenides reached cosmic consciousness and tried to share it with others. Likewise, the Sufi of the Golshani order, Syed Jafar, was a likely extraterrestrial contactee. This legend being preserved about him, recounted in one of the works on Sufism, Caravan of Dreams. This is a favorite tale of Balkan dervishes. It is attributed to Syed Jafar, died in 1598, who was the successor of Ibrahim Golshani of Cairo, who founded the Golshani order, a combination of the four paths of Sufism. He died in 1553. Jafar is popularly believed to have visited the stars, as a sort of precursor to today's spacemen in a luminous chariot without perceptible motive power. The Golshanis handed back their metaphysical endowment in a brass, silver, and copper casket to the Greater Reverend in the 17th century, retaining, it is said, only the powers of obtaining interviews with certain historical figures long dead. The famous Persian Sufi poet Jalaluddin Rumi was also contacted by advanced extraterrestrials and introduced to an off-world cosmic religion of mystical monism, which they attempted to bring into Islam, as the uplifting cultural influence buried within Islam, known as Sufism. The Christian mystic, theologian, scientist, and inventor Emanuel Swedenborg was almost certainly an extraterrestrial contactee, based off of his accounts, as well as other people corroborating his ESP abilities, gift of prophesizing and clairvoyance. Although clearly sounding insane to us today, Swedenborg was something of a phenomenon in his day, and many people attested to how sane, reasonable, mild, gentle, and benevolent he appeared when they met him, not seeming insane at all. He reported freely being able to visit heaven and hell and converse with angels. He also claimed to have visited other planets in our solar system, aided by angels, and wrote an entire theological and philosophical tract called Other Planets, asserting his belief other planets in the universe were populated, such as with angelic entities. He also was an astoundingly high-functioning polymath, having done scientific work in and prefigured ideas of modern neurology, sketches of an airplane, flying machine, pretty similar to what we have now. He studied geology, botany, zoology, and the mechanical sciences under a number of scholars, inventors, and mechanics. He also wrote incredibly detailed theological interpretations of the scriptures, which form the basis of the Swedenborgian Church. As suggested earlier in this thread, the most advanced and developed human beings, according to extraterrestrial judgment, mainly belong to the world's greatest mystical and religious tradition and philosophical schools. They have reached a similar state of the evolution of their souls, colloquially termed enlightenment, or a higher state of consciousness, using the most positive, uplifting, and intelligent sources in their society that they had to do this, or sometimes even learning from many sources. Guideposts to the development of the human consciousness and soul can be found in as apparently differing traditions as Zen, Sufism, and Vedanta, in ancient Greek philosophy, in Hermeticism, in Neoplatonism, and sometimes, to an extent, in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But often the most developed mystics of these religions are ironically shunted to the side and persecuted, their works and thought disregarded, sometimes outright banned or labeled heresy, due to the totalitarian tendencies erected around these same religions. These religions may have started as authentic revelations of the unity of being, of our cosmic and divine knowledge, as well as contact with benevolent or angelic ETs, but were corrupted by many of their followers into anti-evolutionary theocracies. ETs hence choose people like these as ideal contactees. Most of the conscious, high-level, alien contactees on the Earth actually have been and continue to remain anonymous. They are figures like Buddhists, shamans, Hindu yogis, Christian saints and mystics, Sufis, Greek sages, etc., deemed fit and suitable for contact, able to experience it without freaking out, and psychologically and spiritually breaking to pieces. Those who had such contact thereafter had to continue living and functioning normally in society by blending in with humanity, keeping secret what the masses could not understand and would persecute them for. Sometimes, however, as in the cases above, they also started or contributed to religious or philosophical schools and teaching. sometimes including bits about such contact, either in a veiled allegorical form or in legends, or simply as literally as they could, and professing their belief it had happened, like Swedenborg, or as an esoteric tradition, not revealed to the masses, and sometimes not even revealed at all. I now believe there is a universal, perennial, and timeless wisdom accessible to all, regardless of one's location in a country, time period, the culture or zeitgeist one belongs to. Remove these cultural accidents and learn to be still, to quiet and detach yourself from the mechanically, societally conditioned personality that's been formed within you, that you take as you. Do this, and you might glimpse higher truth. Part of it is simply common sense. Another part, benevolence. Another part, purification. Simultaneously, physical, verbal, emotional, and mental purification. Whether you call it the golden rule or karmic law, the ultimate import is the same. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and don't do to them what you wouldn't like done to you. I try to place wisdom above all else in life, seeing it as the highest good now, even if I frequently fail to live up to these high standards, and indulge in the average contemporary vices of modern civilization. Alcohol or drugs, junk food, too much screen time, like internet or television, and so forth. However, after recovering from this episode, my habits got generally better, and outlook on life more positive. Some psychologists refer to this as post-traumatic growth. I was inspired to deeply research all the world's major religious and mystical schools in depth, which I continue to do, as well as both Western and Eastern philosophy. I was firmly reminded of my own and everyone's mortality, making me appreciate life much more. As obviously and repeatedly stated in this thread, I also clearly woke up to the existence, spiritual, and immaterial realms of life. The mind and soul are actually higher and superior transcendent principles to the body, and are meant to shape, control, and discipline that body, and their own emotions, instead of being slaves to the body, or wayward emotions. I've never specifically read anything by Neville Goddard, and just now looked him up at your prompting, so can't give too much of a say on him. However, from what I just read of it, seems he was distilling some timeless, metaphysical, and spiritual insights from the world's religious traditions, which may have some validity, of mind over matter, basically. Thank you for your input and insight. As implied in the OP and first few points, I also think it's probable this is what happened to science fiction author Philip K. Dick in his religious experiences, with him even using the term angelic to refer to some of them. I think, looking into angelology, the subset of theology which studies angels, and claiming contact with the Holy Spirit, which he likened to a living, animated fire, not one which burned, but which illuminated. Dr. John E. Mack's works on this phenomenon, like Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, and Passport to the Cosmos, Human Transformation and Alien Encounters, are especially great and well worth reading on this correlation he saw between alien contactee claimants, disturbed patients he treated and worked with spirituality and religion. He claimed that modern, Western, materialistic, anti-metaphysics blocked us off from an understanding of and insight into this phenomenon, because we simply out of hand deny anything like this could happen. And paradoxically, on the other hand, apparently more primitive or less developed cultures, like shamanic indigenous ones, or the Tibetan culture, might have a better leg up on this phenomenon, even recording accounts like it, and places for these beings in their mythology, and the shaman he talked to telling him experiences startlingly similar to that of his patients. Thank you, and yes, I was going to mention Tesla too. He actually explicitly claimed this. He felt he was telepathically receiving communication from aliens at times, as well as more overly and literally receiving transmissions of theirs to his devices, as well as just seeing scientific truths and visions. He also studied and employed concepts from Hinduism, believing things like Akasha and Prana really correlated to scientific realities. As may be already implied in this thread, but not explicitly said yet, I believe this more subtle telepathic contact and influence, not just the outright nuts and bolts scenario of lifting people up into their spaceships, has played, does play, and will continue to play a more massive influence on humanity than most can conceive of. Once you see this concept/possibility, alien telepathic inspiration of human beings, then look at many strange outliers and figures in human history, or various myths, legends, etc. It becomes impossible to unsee it. Strangely enough, it's like what psychologists called paranoia, the opposite of paranoia. The belief that there's a benevolent conspiracy going on to help you or all of humanity in general. I am not a glowy, but of course, I can't conclusively prove this to you, or anyone, if you or anyone is sufficiently paranoid. I may potentially be unwittingly brainwashed by glowies, or absorbing their disinfo, but try not to be so. I love William Cooper, RIP, for instance, and will outright tell you, don't trust the US federal government, the CIA, the FBI, the Mossad, the Federal Reserve, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Zionists, the Marxists, or even the Nazis. Fuck them all. And don't even uncritically trust extraterrestrial races either, that they're really honestly stating their agendas or are right on everything, or those claiming to be channels, contactees or abductees of such as well, myself included. Another thing that will happen is extraterrestrial observation/monitoring of the Earth and interaction with Earth peoples, as well as the corresponding UFO presence, will get more blatant, obvious, and undeniable. This will reach even surreal and frightening proportions. It will require great spiritual strength to bear with it. Blatantly and obviously experiencing something that can't happen, or this isn't supposed to be real, can be likened to conceptual assault, as one writer I like, Robert Anton Wilson, put it. The general agenda of the more benevolent and advanced ET races seems to be to try to prevent a thermonuclear, Earth-destroying World War III, as well as against our destruction and abuse of the environment in general, and the doings of the criminally insane and corrupt political, military, and economic leaders. They work to prevent such things as nuclear war, for instance, by hovering around and sometimes disabling nuclear missile silos. This is something they've explicitly made known and flexed to major world powers. They all know, and they know the others know. They're rather scared by it, and have agreed internationally to keep it secret from the public, as they don't want to alarm and frighten the public, or traumatize the sleeping hive mind, normies and NPCs. However, they also seem to have an ethical system against explicit and overt interaction with or contact with all of humanity publicly, until or unless, perhaps, the situation on Earth gets so bad it requires their explicitly making their presence known. Call this interstellar or galactic law. Seeing
What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. You were saying that in the car yesterday too. That's always like the aggressive way to go about it, but for what you look at, that's kind of exactly what your field is looking to do, because history is just what we've been told, and when you can find evidence of things that perhaps we haven't considered before, I mean, that quite literally is the definition of it, is it not?
Yeah, and I think in this example, it's not just about changing the paradigm that a lot of other individuals like Graham Hancock and Randall and Robert Schoch and Robert Ball, they're all doing this paradigm shift that is important. It's us understanding that, look, there's another chapter of human civilizations that came before the Ice Age, known as the Younger Dryas, which is approximately around 11,600 years ago or so.
For people who aren't familiar with that, can you just explain the full context there?
Absolutely. So the first thing to understand is that in our history books and through mainstream archaeologists, and anytime you want to try to understand history, we're told through this lens that civilizations emerged 6,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent, which is the Iraqi area today. And that since then, every single ancient ruin, every structure, any writing, doesn't matter, anywhere in the world fits into that time period. So between 6,000 years and our current time period, all of human civilization, in terms of civilization rising, not nomadic hunter-gatherers, is supposedly in that window. The problem is that we're finding evidence all around the world that that's not accurate, and that what we're seeing is that, yes, there was an emergence of civilization 6,000 years ago in the Sumer, but that's only another iteration from previous civilizations that had already been there and other parts of the world. And I want that to be the message that maybe perhaps is echoed more than anything else in this entire conversation, is that nearly everywhere, and I want to say that again, nearly everywhere, we find ancient megalithic, meaning large stones, very high precision quality work, we find evidence that a later culture had found that and built on top of it. So it's not like we ever find something that's just sitting in the middle of nowhere and no one's ever paid attention to it. It seems as though even those civilizations within that 6,000 year window still knew about their past a little bit. They still knew about the connections of these civilizations that were once there. And they took it under great importance to go and then show the importance of those sites through worship and through building in these locations. I mean, if you're a group that only has so many resources and so many things, to go to these great lengths to find these places and then build on top of them shows that they valued that to basically the highest degree. But why? Well, it's because it was part of a lost chapter of our history where those people were different than the groups that came later. They were a lot smarter. They were different in a lot of ways, and we're going to go over some of that. But bringing it back to what we said at the very beginning, I made this statement that I know is it's a very direct and very big statement to make, that we're going to change history. What I meant by that is not just acknowledging the work of all these other individuals as well as myself to say, look, it's not just a 6,000 year window of civilization, but there was a civilization before the Ice Age, before 12,000 years ago, that was the one that was the advanced one, was the one that built all these incredible things that we're about to talk about.
More advanced than we are.
More advanced in some ways. Not more advanced in cell phones and computers, but more advanced in their understanding of the cosmos, consciousness, energy, this important concept, the Hermetic law of as above, so below, the law of correspondence. They understood that to such degree that, for instance, something like the Great Pyramids of Giza, they aligned those to the three belt stars of Orion. But not just there. In Teotihuacan, across the entire world in Mexico, they did the same thing. You see the Temple of the Sun, Temple of the Moon, and Temple of Quetzalcoatl. It's the same alignment as those stars like in Egypt. You're seeing parallels across the entire world of the same thing. But even that is not what I mean by that statement about changing history. There's already a lot of us doing that. What I mean by changing history is, how about proving that not only was there a civilization that was advanced before the Ice Age, but what if there were multiple civilizations even before that have come and gone? And what if we can connect the entire narrative, not only ancient Sumer and not only Peru and Egypt, but what if we can connect Atlantis and connect the ancient Athenian civilization, the pre-Greeks, and then connect every other megalithic advanced civilization around the world to a specific location that is just being excavated right now. And that is what's so exciting. So when I say that statement, I believe this research is so cutting edge that we are literally about to change all of history.
It's a hell of an opener, man. I got goosebumps on my skin right now. Before we get into all the details though, how did you get into this stuff? You've been doing this for what, like a decade now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think the best way to answer that would be to say that I was a weird kid. I was a kid that other kids were I think they felt uncomfortable around me. I was a weird kid. I really was. I was a kid that instead of playing with toys, I'd be walking around the playground looking around rocks and crystals and trying to find stuff.
You were one of those.
I was like, I didn't really I was sort of a loner. I didn't feel like anyone could understand me. I was always asking questions about the stars and about the earth. And I remember being 8 years old or 9 years old and asking another kid, being like, hey, did you know that we're on a planet that's flying through space, and that if you look up there, you're looking at basically an entire star that's shining and giving us light? I remember kids being like, what?
Yeah.
Like they didn't understand, and I felt like I was never understood.
Did you go through a period where you lost that a little bit and didn't ask those questions?
I think that's a pretty common thing. I didn't totally lose it, but I think you look at the education system, and like you and I were talking about last night with the whole Carl Sagan discussing how kids hit a certain age. What was that, third grade or
something? And maybe it was like kindergarten or something.
And because of the way that things are designed, imagination and thinking outside the box and all those questions, like that's really not promoted, or in many ways it's almost scolded in some people.
Yes.
I remember being in class and asking a lot of questions, and having the teacher eventually be quiet or just stop asking questions. And so part of it started to, like you said, it deludes a little bit, right? You're like, what am I doing? Like, am I like the one that's really weird and I should be more like them? But eventually I really never conformed to that. And instead I just started going out in the wilds and like hiking and going out into nature. And I just sort of ran away from the world is the best way to describe it. And I think a lot of people listening to this that will probably relate to that.
Sure.
Is having difficulty, and there's this core inside you that doesn't want to conform. No matter what happens, it's like there's something inside us. Some of us are very, very strong with that, and I never did. But because of that, I didn't have very many friends. But to make a long story short, it set me up for this place of being a very inquisitive person and wanting to know more. But I remember at the core of that, I was always incredibly fascinated with, like, almost an obsession, even at a young age, and I had no idea why, the idea of a lost civilization. Something even shown like in a silly concept like in Jungle Book, right? Disney movie. But you're a kid, you're watching it. Remember in Jungle Book, he finds this ancient temple that is ruled over by like orangutans.
Yeah.
Right? And but there's no humans left. It's like the remnants of it, and it's all overgrown in the jungle. I remember being a kid and being like, oh my God, why is this so amazing to me? And it wasn't until movies like Stargate came along that totally.
Stargate? I don't think I'm familiar with
Stargate is, for anyone who hasn't seen Stargate, not the TV show, but the actual original movie, just one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. It's a movie about an ancient culture that had some kind of a Stargate type of material that was found, and it was determined to be a gateway to like another star system. Great movie. But the point was, these little things kept coming in my life that made me start questioning and wondering about things. And it wasn't until reading The Serious Mystery with Robert Temple with the Dogon and their
this is what you were talking about last night.
And their understanding of like details of the Sirius stars A, B, and C, and the Canis Major, and all the orbital tracks of everything, and how they said they were influenced by all these things. But they're like this remote tribe in the middle of Mali, Africa. How could they know any of that before telescopes were invented?
Can you explain them
Sure.
and that whole thing? Because that blew my mind.
Yeah,
last
I'll
night.
give that.
This was the one where you were talking about they put one elder in the cave and everything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is wild.
I guess it's important because this is what was my spark. People talk about what is that spark that sends you off on a completely different path in life, where you start then questioning everything else. And I was primed for that moment, because when I read that book, it's one of those moments where you sit it down and you just sort of stare up and you're like, what the hell? Like, because then all of a sudden your brain has to reformat. It's a lot harder than people, I think, just think it is. When you're taught everything in your life about everything in a certain way, and your teachers and your parents, to change a paradigm of our entire history, who we are, influence potentially the stars, that's a big shift, because it shifts your whole brain into different thinking. And that shift came with the story of the Dogon. And what the story is, if those aren't familiar with it, it's one of those things that is impossible to truly refute. And I think that's why it's so powerful. The story is that there's a tribe in Mali, Africa, Western Africa, very remote region, that had never been visited by the outside world. And there was originally one, but eventually became two French anthropologists in the 1930s, were fascinated by this tribe. They met them, but what they were so fascinated by was that the tribe had all these incredible stories of their heritage and their history that they wouldn't tell him. This is what I didn't mention to you last night. That's so fascinating, is that he wanted to know this incredible history because they had drawn in the sand like orbital tracks of stars and stuff, and things that they should not have known because the telescope hadn't been invented. They knew about the star Sirius A, but B and C. B hadn't even been discovered yet by radio telescope. Once B was discovered, they were like, wait, so the Dogon already knew about that before they even had telescopes. But they also say there's a star called Sirius C that we haven't even discovered yet. Okay, so the point was, they knew incredible amounts of information, not just about the Sirius star system, but about our Earth, about the energy of it, about the source God. So this French anthropologist is forced to stay with them for 10 years. Live with them for 10 years because they wouldn't tell him. They didn't trust him.
So they forced him to stay.
No,
there.
But if he wanted to know, he had
Oh,
to
I see what
stay.
you're
So they
saying.
didn't make him. They didn't say you
Yes,
can't leave.
yes.
But he wanted to know. So in order for them to tell him, he had to stay with the culture to gain their trust for 10 years. The reason for that was that the Dogon had such profound information about their history that they felt that the only way to not have that message be polluted was they would have an elder of the community be decided, and then a secondary elder that could communicate with them, and they would isolate themselves in a cave, completely isolated from the outside world.
The elder who was
The
never
elder,
allowed
yes.
out. It's like a life sentence.
But he's the only one who knew the entire